professors under assault for expressing unpopular opinions on campus, and the university administrators who ignore the problem. Next on Campus Roundup. Hello, I'm Dr. Duke, and this is the Campus Roundup at the College Fix. Our top story segment today focuses on professors who are coming under fire for simply pointing out liberal bias on campuses. To talk more about this, we welcome Brittany Slaughter, a student at Liberty University and a reporter for the College Fix. You wrote a really interesting article about a professor who was attacked for simply reporting the truth that liberal administrators vastly outnumber conservative ones on college campus. Talk a little bit about your article. Give us the background.
Yeah, so when I got the pitch, I was very excited about it. And the first thing I did was contact Professor Abrams. And he got back to me right away. And we had an interview, and he said that he did lots and lots of research. And what happened was, when he wrote the article, he got attacked for it. There were signs immediately on his door telling him to quit, calling him all sorts of names, saying that he was racist, and suggesting that he work in Charlottesville, which we all know what that implies. And Professor Abrams, he's taken it in stride. He really, he's like, this is what you get when you challenge the status quo, which I think is just fantastic. But the school sent out an email saying, we are a school that believes in diversity and respecting each other's views. But then the next day, the school talked to Abrams, and they were like, you may be on the market for a new job.
But it drives me nuts is this, for the cameras, for the reporters, we believe in diversity of opinion, even though we don't hire any conservative administrators. We believe in diversity of opinion, and yet when one professor speaks out about the bias against conservatives, we tell him he needs to look for another job. That's pretty much the gist of it, right?
Yes, and what was crazy is Professor Abrams even says, in his interview with me and in the article, he's not attacking one group of people. He's not trying to be rude or disrespectful, but he's just challenging that the problem that he sees is that maybe there is a one-sidedness to applying for schools and applying for colleges that conservatives don't really have a leg to stand on. They don't really have a chance.
Yeah, and that's it. I mean, professors are in the news every day calling out bias, right? More inclusivity, more diversity. Yet on this one issue, and as you pointed out, Professor Abrams was not arguing that liberals are bad people or liberal administrators shouldn't be hired. He's simply pointing out that when you have these kind of disparities politically, it's going to cause problems. And you would think he had actually said something racist. What alarms me is how quickly questioning the tactics of race-baiting academics is now akin to racism itself.
All he said was they got an email, the professors, talking about these different events that the school is hosting. And he noticed that most of them are very progressively liberal, is what he says. And so he's like, well, what about the other students? What about the conservatives? And by simply saying we should include everyone, we should have respect for everyone, the same people that preach that were the ones that called him horrible names, called him racist. It doesn't add up. It doesn't make sense.
Well, why is this even a debate? I mean, given that the overwhelming, 98% of campus administrators are actually hired from the faculty up. In other words, in order to become a dean or an assistant dean or a vice chancellor, you have had to spend 20, 30 years as an academic and a faculty member. Usually a full professor tenured in some department, and now then you just climb the ranks. And if we recognize that the overwhelming majority of professors are liberals, why would we be surprised to learn that the overwhelming number of administrators are liberals too? Talk a little bit about how you wrote the article, though. What kind of cooperation or lack of cooperation did you get when you reached out to the college?
Definitely. So one of the things that my editor wanted me to do was talk to the school newspaper, because they cover the article first, and on their campus. And the newspaper editor, he was great. He was like, if you need anything else, let me know. The school was not so cooperative. I emailed the media people with the group, with the school. I emailed some administrators, and I did not hear back at all. And, to me, you think that they would want to respond and have their side told. But when I read another article on a blog called Reason, they said the same thing, that the school refused to comment. So the professor was great. The newspaper editor was great. The school would just rather not comment, I suppose.
You have a professor being harassed. You have a professor whose office door is being vandalized. You have kids threatening, harassing, vandalizing. And so politically correct is the environment there, at least among the administrators at Sarah Lawrence, that you will not call them out, you will not hold them accountable, you will not investigate and punish those students. You'll merely tout the diversity line to placate the vandals, to placate the harassers. And then you'll privately tell the professor, wink, wink, maybe you ought to be looking for another job. Again, more proof that what these administrators fear is not the truth, is not solid research. What they fear is doing anything that might upset the most radical fringe of students on their campus.
That is so true. And Professor Abrams even said that he talked to the administration and was like, I've been attacked. I'm the one that the students have been, going after. And the administrator said that he was the one attacking a group of students. That's what they told him, as he told Reason. That's so backwards. It does not make sense.
Yeah, if you're not protecting anybody on campus from threats, harassment, and vandalism, you are letting down your entire student body and your entire faculty, most of whom are progressives. Way to go, Sarah Lawrence. Brittany Slaughter, we certainly appreciate your time today. Good job on that article. I know we'll be talking to you again real soon. All right, now time to shift to Talking Campus, our weekly discussion with members of the College Fix editorial team. Today I'm joined by College Fix editor Jennifer Cabani to continue the conversation about professors, liberal professors, libertarian professors, conservative professors on the left and the right who fall out of favor and face serious backlash on their campuses for voicing non-progressive ideas. Jen, talk a little bit about a series of stories that the College Fix has done about how these professors are under assault.
Yes. So anytime that there is a professor who espouses a conservative or centrist or libertarian viewpoint, it seems no matter what venue that they provide that in the classroom, in a scholarly piece, in a blog post, where have it, they get attacked, ridiculed, pressured by administrators, peers, protested by students. And we have chronicled so many examples of this. I mean, honestly, I could run the gamut. There was a conservative professor at UCLA, Keith Fink, who criticized free speech problems at UCLA. Boom, he was fired. We have the famous story of John McAdams at Marquette University, who had the audacity to criticize a professor who told her student he couldn't disagree with gay marriage in class. Boom, he was fired. He fought, by the way, and is now going to be teaching next semester, but it was a hard-fought battle. We have Professor Josh Blackman. He's a law professor from Texas who was giving a speech up in New York, and the students descended on his lecture hall and demanded, that he not be heard. And eventually they left, but not before completely disrupting his speech. What they were upset is that he believes in the traditional interpretation of the Constitution. That was his big problem that they had with him. We have the Florida Atlantic professor. Now, this is an interesting one. It's not as well known of a case, but his name is Marshall DeRosa. And he had written some interesting pieces. For one, he wrote a piece that highlighted Blacks' involvement in the black slave trade, kind of combating the narrative that it was only whites involved in the slave trade. He also refused to call Bruce Jenner a woman. And it was things like this that made his students at his school, protest and demand that he be fired and that sort of thing. There's so many more that we probably can't get to, but on and on and on. Anytime a professor steps out of line, boom, protests, demands to be fired, called out, administrative repercussions, and so on.
Yeah, I had a conversation just today in my classrooms about this. I was teaching Shakespeare's King Lear, and I was trying to explain to students why it is bad for you to only hear what you already think you know. And it was tense at times, but we got through it. But trying to convince kids that there are two sides to history, that there are advantages even for very progressive kids to hear serious non-progressive arguments. You have to sell that to them. It really is bad how they've been trained. And one of the things that we've seen, Jen, is that you just ran off a gauntlet of conservative-leaning professors. I guess we shouldn't be surprised that they're under fire. I mean, I'd be surprised if they weren't. But what's really happened over the last couple of years is libertarian left of center professors now who find themselves for stray comments or for conducting research that doesn't provide the results that progressives want. They're getting blowback. Talk about some of those stories.
That's true. So even professors who are self-described leftists or centrists, they get attacked if they don't toe the line. Of course, there was the very famous example of Brett and Heather Haying at Evergreen State College, who even before Brett had infamously refused to leave campus on the day of absence, Anti-Whiteness Day. Even before that, he was fighting progressive ideology as the faculty were trying to implement all these equity clauses. So he was run out of the school. I mean, there was groups of students wielding bats going around threatening people, and they protested his classroom, and he and his wife, had to settle a lawsuit with the school, and they left. But they are atheists. They are super leftists. But no, because they didn't toe the racial lines, they were booted, or they had kind of forced to leave. And then we also have the case of Amy Wax at the University of Pennsylvania. And she's a centrist. She's a law professor. She kind of just speaks very plainly, very bluntly. And she had the audacity. She's gotten under fire for a couple of things. The first thing that she said was, "Were the 50s so bad?" Right? Was the olden days in the 50s and the mom and pop and the stable traditional family, was that such a horrible thing? We actually thrived under that structure. So that was the first thing she got in trouble for. And then the second thing she got in trouble for was saying that Black law students don't graduate at the top of their class. And people were furious. And she replied rather bluntly, "Well, the facts don't lie." But at any rate, she's been stripped of her right of teaching a mandatory law school class for freshmen. And they're still petitioning to have her fired for one reason or the other, because she keeps saying controversial things and she won't quiet down. And then there's also one example about Michael Rechtenwald. He's a famous New York University professor who called himself the anti-PC professor. And he started poking fun of and mocking, the political correctness on campuses. And when his identity was discovered, he was attacked on social media and by his peers and by his students. And granted, this was after 10 years of dedicating his life to left-leaning social science. So it doesn't matter, if you're conservative or libertarian or leftist, you don't follow the dogma they want you to, and you will be attacked.
A hostile work environment and lack of collegiality. That's what they got McAdams for, right? Hostile work environment, lack of collegiality. This is progressive code for, hey, Buster, the entire campus is liberal. If you make them angry, you're the problem, not them. Jennifer Kabani, it has been a great pleasure to speak with you today, and we look forward to seeing you next time. Someone once famously observed that the fish rots from the head down. That is a perfect metaphor for college campuses, where university administrations will not protect the right of progressive and conservative faculty to research, to speak, to write, to teach the way they see fit, even if those ideas occasionally cut against the grain of progressive orthodoxy. If we do not have school administrators who will put students in their places, tell students who are protesting, you have a right to protest, but you don't have the right to get teachers fired. You don't have the right to silence teachers you disagree with. If we don't have a university administration willing to do that, then you don't have administrators at all. You have a campus run by an anarchy of students. And that's really fishy, and it stinks. And that's the final fix. Be sure to stay up on all the latest news and information from the College Fix by joining us on all of our social media platforms. For the Campus Roundup, I'm Dr. Duke, and we will see you next time.